Hello my dear sewing friends, today we're doing something super easy. Like if you can hold the pencil and draw a line, that's how easy it's going to be. We are turning one of your existing t-shirts from your wardrobe into a pattern for your future designs. Remember, if I can do it, then you can do it, so let's get started. You're watching Easy Sewing DIY, a weekly series where I make a simple pattern, then I sew it and love it. Everything is straightforward, so you can make it as well. Tune in for new episodes every weekend. To make this pattern, you will need a pencil, an actual t-shirt that fits you well, not too baggy and not too tight, then some paper. I'm using gift wrapping paper because it already has convenient lines, but printer paper will do just fine, and a ruler is a good addition to this list as well. Now the first step would be to fold your t-shirt in half and make sure that all of the seams and side seams are matching. So neckline to neckline, shoulder seam to shoulder seam, side seam to side seam. Here I'm also pinning my t-shirt in place so that way it really doesn't move around. However, if you're using a good quality t-shirt that you plan on wearing in the future, please don't use any pins as it might ruin the fabric. Step number 2 would be to place your t-shirt on your pattern paper. For step number 3, we're going to mark the front neckline, the back neckline, and hem. So take your pencil and let's start with the front neckline. Now, I'm marking not where the neckband is at, but where our true neckline is at. And I'm going to do the same for our back neckline, and I'm going to do the same for the hem. And for the hem, I'm going to round it up just by a tiny bit since the hem is pretty much straight. Now I'm going to take the ruler and I'm going to do a straight line from one point to another. I'm using Sharpie here so that way you can see a little bit better. And now let's do a straight line from this top point where our back neckline is at. Now take your t-shirt, match the points that we just did, the back neckline, front neckline, and the hem. There we go. And let's mark our shoulder line. So take your pencil, mark the top of the shoulder. Now mark the bottom of the shoulder. And connect those points with a straight line. Now let's mark the back of the neckline and the front of the neckline. I am just doing a generic neckline. However, if you'd like to be more precise, you can copy the exact neckline of your t-shirt. Now mark the bottom of your ARMSCYE and the other side of the hem. My side seam is pretty much straight, which makes it very easy to work with. And let's do a straight line from this point to the bottom of the t-shirt. There we go. Now the next step would be to mark the curve of the ARMSCYE. This one is the most challenging part because you don't really have the edge that you can see, so you really just need to make sure that you're marking where the true seam of the sleeve is at. Now let's mark that with a dashed line. Alright. Let me do that in Sharpie. There we go, so that way you can see a little bit better. And let's finish the hem of the actual t-shirt. Alright, we're almost there. This step is optional, but I do mark my bust line and my waistline, so that way when I do make more of these patterns or I modify this pattern, it's going to be so much easier for me to understand where the measurements should go. So this is my bust line, this is my waistline, and I'm going to do 2 straight lines from those points. And you should mark them accordingly, bust and waist. Next step is to take care of the sleeve. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to cut away the excess from my ARMSCYE and my shoulder seam. But I'm doing this just because I don't have enough paper width. So I'm going to use an extra piece of paper to do my sleeve. If you have enough paper in the first place, you don't have to do this step. So here I'm just matching up all the little squares, and I'm going to secure this in place with a little bit of Scotch tape. Once that is done, I'm going to take my t-shirt and I'm going to line up all of the little markings that we did before, so that way I can really make sure that I copy the sleeve with as much precision as I can. Now take your ruler, and here you can clearly see that the sleeve is pretty much the extension of the shoulder line. So draw a straight line, mark the sleeve width and the bottom of the sleeve. There we go. And make sure that this is on almost on a straight angle. There we go. And I'm going to outline this with a Sharpie. Our sleeve is pretty much done. Now the next step would be to cut everything out, and I like to cut everything without seam allowances. However, if you do want to add your seam allowances before cutting it out, here's a little hack. Take 2 Sharpies or 2 pencils or 2 pens, whatever. Take a scrunchie or anything else to tie them together, and then what you're going to do is you're going to draw around your pattern, which is going to create a very nice and even seam allowance for you. And here you can see a little example on a scrap piece of paper that I have. Obviously you will need to watch for the width of the seam allowance, but you get the idea. Now let's cut everything out. As I mentioned before, I like my patterns without seam allowances, since I do add seam allowances as I go, and I also modify them depending on how thick or thin is the fabric. Now this is optional, but I will mark my bust and waist quarter measurements on the actual pattern, so that way I can visually see what are my true measurements. So for the bust, it's actually 9 inches, and for the waist, it's going to be 7.5. My bust line is 9 inches, and that's actually how wide this pattern is. Since this is t-shirt and we're going to be working with a stretch fabric, it allows us to work without any extra ease. Alright, we're on the finishing line. The last thing to do is to do the neckband. We're going to use a scrap piece of paper and a measuring tape. We're going to measure the front and the back. So the front is 6, the back is 4. We're going to sum them together, which makes it 10 inches. And since your neckband needs to be stretched out, I usually do them 1/5 or 1/4 smaller than the half measurement. And it really depends on the fabric that you're going to be using. So 1/5 from 10 inches would be 2. So instead of doing the neckband 10 inches on a fold, I'm going to be doing it 8 inches on a fold. And my neckband is also going to be 2 inches wide, which is going to make for 1 inch when it's folded in half. That's it, easy peasy, just like that. If you would like to draft your t-shirt from scratch, definitely check out the video that you see on your screen right now for that tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.